Okay, so here we're getting into the practice. Okay, how should we do this? I'm going to recommend that you actually draw these scales, measuring scales, in your notebook. So why don't you take a few minutes and do that. Use a straight edge. The distance between your tick marks should be pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do the best you can, and then come back. Okay, so in this first scale, where we have 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all in grams. So the first thing I'm gonna do is figure out the least count. So what did you come up with for that? 1 gram, because 5 minus 4 is 1, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So no matter what tick marks you subtract, you're going to get the same answer. All right, now what about first best guess? Well, it's clearly more than 3. It's somewhere between 3 and 4, but it's certainly less than halfway in between 3 and 4. So I'm going to say 3.2. Now, if you put 3.3, that's fine too. 3.1, that's not a great guess because, I mean, it's clearly more than 1/10 of the way between 3 and 4. But anyway, so 3.2, 3.3 work fine. Now, what about the uncertainty? So remember, the uncertainty is based on how many tick marks you can visualize. So between 3 and 4, and those tick marks are pretty far apart. So I'm going to say I can visualize 10 spaces in there, which means my uncertainty is going to be a 1. But what place value is that 1 going to be in? Well, if you look at the 3.2, where's the guess? The 0.2. And the guess is the thing that you're uncertain about. So your uncertainty is in the same place as your guess, and you get an uncertainty of plus or minus 0.1 grams. You don't have to have the 0 in front of the 0.1, but it's a good habit to get into. It sort of draws the reader's eye to the fact that there's a decimal point there. So it's a good habit to get into. Okay, the next one is a little different, but the space between the tick marks looks approximately the same. But in this case, the adjacent tick marks are 30 and 40. So instead of a least count of 1 like we had before, what's the least count in this one going to be? Correct, 10 grams. All right, so notice that the 1, the 10, is really in the 10's place. Okay, so let's look at the yellow line. It's somewhere between 50 and 60, and it's definitely more than halfway between 50 and 60. So I'm going to guess 56. Now, if you guess 57, that would be fine. If you guess 55, I'm going to say that's not fine because you can see that it's more than halfway in between. And 58 and 59 are just way closer to the 60. So my guess is the 6. I'm not guessing the 50 because there's a line that indicates 50, but I am guessing the 6. So automatically, what place value is my uncertainty going to be in? Well, the 6 is in the 1's place, which means my uncertainty is going to be in the 1's place. And because those tick marks are pretty far apart and I can visualize 10 spaces between them, I'm going to say my uncertainty is plus or minus 1 gram. Notice the uncertainty is in the 1's place and the guess, which is the 6, is in the 1's place. All right, so here now it gets a little trickier. Looking at this next scale, it's similar to the first one, except that this time there are additional tick marks between the 3 and the 4, and you can actually see that there are now 10 spaces between the 2 and the 3 and the 3 and the 4. So even though the numbered lines count by 1s, those are not adjacent anymore. adjacent is the 3 and the 3.1, right? So 3.1 minus 3 is 0.1. 3.5 minus 3.4 is 0.1. So the least count in this case is 0.1. Even though the tick marks aren't numbered, they are there, so they have value. And so you could pretend they're numbered. So the least count in this case is 0.1 grams. Now, the guess. Well, it's definitely between the 2 and the 3, so it's 2 point something, and it's 7, 8, so 6, 7, 8. So it's 2.8 something. The 2 is not a guess because there's a line. The 8 is not a guess because there's a tick mark for that too. So it's someplace between 2.8 and 2.9. Now to me, it looks like it's right smack in between 2.8 and 2.9. So I'm going to say my first best guess is 2.84. Oh, I could have said 2.85. Anyway, either way is fine. Anyway, so 2.84, 2.85. Notice that the 2 is not a guess because there's a 2. The 0.8 is not a guess because although it's not numbered, there is a 0.8 line, but the 4 is a guess. So automatically, where do you know your uncertainty is going to be? What place value? It's going to be in the hundreds, where the 4 is. Now, the question now is it a 1, a 2, or a 5? Well, if you look to me, I can easily divide those, the space in between those tick marks into 2 spaces. You might have better eyes than I do, which is fine. But I'm going to say that I could only divide it into 2 spaces, which means my uncertainty is going to be greater than it was like in the first one. I'm not quite sure because, it could be a 4, could be a 5, could be a 6. So my uncertainty is going to be plus or minus 0.05. Well, why did I put the 5 in the hundreds place? Because that's where the guess is in the hundreds place. You're uncertain about your guess. So there's logic behind why it's in that place value. All right, one more. In this case, what do you get the least count to be? 1 gram. That's what I got. Okay, great. So it's between 45 and 46. So I'm going to say it's 45 something. I say 45.6. Now, you could have said 45.5. Yeah, I think those are probably the 2 best ones. So the 40 is not a guess because there's a line for it. The 45 is not a guess because there's a line for it. The 6, the 0.6, is a guess, which means what place is your uncertainty going to be in? Right, it's going to be in the 10th place this time. So looking at those lines, they're a little farther apart than the tick marks in the example above. So I'm going to say I could divide that into 5 spaces easily in my mind. So I'm going to call that a division into 5 spaces. So that means my uncertainty is a 2, but the 2 is going to be in the 10th place. So there it is. So the uncertainty is plus or minus 0.2 grams. Okay, so I think we need some more practice. So I will have a practice sheet for you in class, or somebody will. Anyway, ask questions, please, and thanks.